Hello, welcome to Go-to-Market Institute. My name is Mick Bono, and we're continuing talking about the effective ways of conducting customer interviews. And this is a fourth session and the last session. And today we're going to talk about setting, conducting, summarizing, analyzing customer interviews. This is the last section. And we're going to discuss in first how to set up customer interviews, what do you have to do in terms of reaching out to your target audience. We're going to talk about how conducting and managing the interview, and we'll talk about how to summarize and analyze feedback. Right. I would like to remind you that Go-to-Market Institute's mission is to empower entrepreneurs and go-to-market teams with strategies and tactics to build, market, and grow great products. Also, a quick reminder, if you find this information helpful, please like and subscribe, leave questions in the comments, and I will get back to them. If the question requires a little bit more context, I'll record a video with that question and share that as well. Also, there will be available some templates around the strategy, how to create a customer interview strategy doc and interview script. All right, so a quick recap. In our last session 3, we discussed everything you need to do in order to create an interview strategy doc, which includes an interview script. And you also know that you probably want to go between 10 and 20 interviews. And right now we'll talk about how to set up those interviews. Well, in order to have 10 or 20 interviews, you need to understand that, especially for the prospects you're going to try to reach out, you're going to have to send about 100 cold messages, and you'll get probably about 30 of them get response, and about 10 will end up to be interviewed. So if you're looking to get 20 interviews, you need to reach out to at least 200 prospects. So that's kind of the math that you're looking when it comes to sending cold outreach messages. So the best way to connect with potential customers or prospects to interviews are through 2 channels, LinkedIn and email. So LinkedIn is just easy way for you to select the company, kind of characteristics that you're looking for, the target profile, and then you can have a list of prospects that you want to reach out to. And email is still one of the best way to have a direct communication channel with somebody. So I will focus on just 2 channels, but there are other channels that you can find and ask people to interview. For example, sometimes I would reach out to, if I find a forum on Reddit, this is a good place to reach out to somebody and see if they will be willing to have a conversation more, if they posted something related on the topic that I'm researching. I have also done reaching out to people who are leaving specific product reviews on the resources like G2 Crowd. And I've also reached out to people through Slack communities, Discord and Facebook forums. And last but not the best, not the worst place to look for people to interview is in-person events and conferences. So just keep in mind that when you're trying to find people to interview, those are the good places also to do that. Now, you want to develop a cold outreach messages, and you want to create a few templates. And I would like to give you a few tips in order how to create an effective outreach message to design to build your list people that you want to interview. So number 1, be concise and short. So limit messages to 3 to 5 sentences. Number 2, be honest and direct about purpose of your message, meaning that explain why you're reaching out to them and explain that you want to interview them right away. So there will be no misunderstanding. Make sure it's clear. Number 3, tell them why you're conducting interviews, what do you want to get out of them. It is important. There is tons of studies and research that has been done that when people tell why they asking something, people are more likely to actually do that regardless of what that why is. So explain them why you're doing what you're doing, and ensure that you don't sell and just point out that this is not a sales call. You're not try to sell them. And obviously, if you are getting on the call with them, do not sell. This is not a selling exercise. Yes, in some instances, those interview will be helpful, and you might ask them to later if they want to be your test customers later on. But on this call, just focus on getting information and getting insights into your customers and your prospects. All right, so number 5, be specific about time commitment. Again, I like to showcase during the messages and outreach that it's going to take about 20 minutes. I sometimes say 20 minutes, but when I book, I say 30. I think people right now kind of okay and expect that about 20-30 interval meetings invite. So that should work perfectly. Number 6, reduce administration work, so use tools to help you book calendars, use tools for the conferences, for recording the calls. And this is a huge one. It may be underestimated because when people want to help and they say, yes, I want to be part of this interview, it's very frustrating when people start saying like, hey, what is the best time for you? And does it this time work? Does that time work? What's your email? Let me send the email to you. Like all of those extra steps make it already so tiring for people to take the next step, and you kind of wear them out even before they're going to get into their interview. So use products and really focus on reducing work. So if they say yes, just send them a link so they can, with a plenty of spaces, so you can book time with them. Now, number 7, I don't like necessarily offering incentives, but there is going to be some instances where incentive might be appropriate. Sometimes you'll have a first initial conversation for 30 minutes, and then you decide that this person have a lot of extra and deep information in the industry, and you want to book an extra hour. And this is where you might want to offer some incentive. However, don't overdo it, because if you're going to provide a lot of incentive for the people, they might be enticed to please you during the interview rather than answering honestly about how they feel about the problem. So remember, in a section 2, we talked about actually enticing people through the motivation, like what motivates them to take an action. And remember that, and try to focus on intangibles of why people like to help. Ask for help, and typically that will be enough for you to book a call with the person. Number 8, clear formatting. Make it easy to read and scan. This is, I think, is underestimated. It's super valuable and helpful when the message that you sent is very clear. It's broken down in meaningful pieces. It's easier to scan. You use bullet points. So formatting is important. And number 9, don't expect that somebody's gonna reply to you with one message. So follow up at least 2 times, but not more than that. Just use the rule of thumb of reaching out 3 times the first time, and 2 follow-ups. And if you don't get response, just move on. Remember, even sometimes in sales, you want to have 8 or 9 times reaching out to the customer, but at that process, the product that you might provide might help them. So that's okay to reach out multiple times. In this case, you're actually asking for help, and if you haven't received response in 2 follow-ups, then it's time to move on to another prospect. Well, this is how I like to structure my LinkedIn cold outreach strategy. So the first step, if I am not connected with the person, I send a custom connection request. So LinkedIn limits the number of characters to about 300. So I'll make sure that my template and the way I'm reaching out, I fit into that limitation. The second step is, if the connection is accepted, I send the first follow-up right away. So if connection requested is not accepted, then I send the follow-up LinkedIn email. And if connection is not accepted yet, then I will send an email again, or send an email. So if the first is ignored, I'll wait a day or 2, and I send a second follow-up. And if the second follow-up ignored, I'll send the final follow-up. So that's kind of very simple. I try to do at least 3 contact attempts, and if they're not successful, I am moving into the next person on the list, because again, you're trying to get help and try to understand. So everybody's busy, and it's okay if most of those responses would be no. Now, outreach message structure. So first of all, you want to greet and name who you are. You want to say who, what, and why, and then you want to state the ask and the next step. So this is a very simple and simplified way of doing the outreach, which actually works for sales and actually worked pretty good in outreach messages in general. So a couple of examples for first attempt reach out. So I say, hi, John. We are researching how marketers and content writers manage content creation and distribution process. It will be great to tap into your expertise, which you'll be open and having a quick 20-minute call. See, It's very simple. I haven't even introduced myself here quite because I'm doing this through LinkedIn. They can look on LinkedIn and see who I am. So I'm just really stating why we're reaching out. We are doing this. You have expertise. Can we talk? 3 sentences, probably the most simple and easiest. Now, this is another example of first attempt reach out. John, I'm conducting an expert interviews on how engineering teams use or don't use code reviews in the interview process. Would you be open to sharing your expertise over a 20-minute call? It won't be a sales call. Can I share a link with a calendar to find you some time for us? So this is another one that I do through the LinkedIn. And just quick note that sometimes if I do the first outreach with email, I would actually introduce myself more, and I'll just say, hey, I'm a founder of Publish Now, or I'm doing this and that, or I have this and that background. So try to understand the difference between the LinkedIn message and the email. Now, this is a third example of doing an outreach. Hi, John. I would like to connect and interview you for 20 minutes on engineering hiring processes. It won't be a sales call. It's just to ask you a few questions about your current hiring processes. Would you be open to sharing your expertise on hiring engineers? So this one is, again, like I'm trying to showcase, and this is an example where I would use something like that in sending first connection request, because I'm saying, hey, I would like to connect to interview, and I'm just stating right away why I'm doing what I'm looking for to get out of this. And this is the fourth version of first attempt example. Hey, John, I'd like to learn how engineering teams set up their hiring and candidate evaluation processes. Would you be open to sharing your expertise over a quick 20-minute call? It won't be a sales call. I'm curious to know what works for you and what doesn't. Can I share a link to the calendar to find some time for us? All right, the second follow-up, second attempt or first follow-up would be a few examples here. We're trying to understand the problem challenges that you and your team are facing when it comes to content creation and publishing. Would you be open to sharing your expertise over a quick interview call? Or can you help us understand the challenges that teams like yours facing in terms of content publishing and distribution? It won't take longer than 30 minutes, and we'll provide you with a $30 Starbucks gift card. So this is another few examples to reach out and follow up on the first attempt, and you can use and see which works best for you. And the third attempt to follow up, or third attempt to reach out, or second follow up, I'm just following up on my previous messages. As a reminder, we want to interview you to learn from expertise in content marketing and distribution. Can I send you a link to book a call with us? I think that what is important in each of those follow-ups and each of those reaching out, that I repeat, or you have to repeat why you want to talk to them. Like, we want to interview because you have expertise in something. And I don't mind repeating that. And I think it's important to repeat that because this is something that would, there's high chance they haven't read the previous message, and highlighting it here will get more attention and remind them, or at least tell them why you're reaching out to them. All right, so this is an example of in the session 2, and I'll share the link here. It's missing. There is a YC video that talked about how the customer interviews were done at Airbnb, and Gustav provide this message example. So what could be improved here? And I think that the main thing that I would point out, that compared to the templates that we just discussed, this is a little bit too long, right? And I think that the big thing here is also formatting. And yes, he introduces himself, he talks about the first thing, and then he has an ask. But it is a lot of content. It's hard to read and hard to scan. So he talks a lot about the other thing is try to be more authentic. So here Gustav says, I used to work at BNB and used to manage a growth team, and I'm still impressed by what you have accomplished at Flexport. Congrats. Well, I doubt that Gustav knows what he has accomplished at Flexport, and it just sounds very weird. So I would suggest to be more authentic. If you know them from previous experience, just highlight, hey, how's it going? Like, it's been a long time. Or just highlight something that you like about the company in general, but don't just assume it just sounds a little bit fake. Also, simplify who and why. Shorten the fact that you say they're busy. Like, I understand you must be very busy, and I'm extremely thankful for to even get your few minutes with this, right? Like, just simplify that. We know everybody's busy. We don't have to say that. Just extra words that do not provide a lot of value here. So, and have a direct ask. If you look at this message, yes, he kind of goes and then asks that, but it's not in the form of the answer, right? Like of a question, right? Like, would you be open to have the interview? Like a question mark that forced people to answer. So if you look at that example, those are the things that I would improve in terms of messaging the target audience that you'd like to talk to. And this is another example of Gustav's message, and I think I have a lot of similar feedback here. There's not a great formatting here. You probably would be more concise, and you probably want to be more specific in terms of asking, and shorter in terms of asking for the interview. Now, in order to optimize your outreach process, here's what I recommend. We talked about that. If you wanted to have 20 interviews, you need to reach out about 200 people of prospects. If you have a customers, it's easier to do because you can just ask your customer success team or your sales team who have a relationship with the customers, and they will be able to book something with you easily. Now, if you were looking for prospects, obviously you have to reach out more people. Do the outreach in 20 in 50 in chunks of 50. So I would just put it aside an hour, do a 50 LinkedIn messages, then in the morning, then I'll probably do another 50 in the evening, and then the next day I'll do 50 in the morning, and then the next day in the evening I'll do 50 in the evening. And then I also like to have 3 or 5 outreach templates variation, as I showed to you a few times, like variate how do I introduce myself, what I'm asking, the way I'm asking. Do I just ask if they're willing to have a conversation or what time works for them, or just provide the link right in the first message? So those types of things that you want to experiment with when you do outreach for the prospects. Also, read out your messages out loud. So I was forced to read out messages out loud, as I was given an example here. And even in some of them, I was just reading, and I would just realize that some of them were a little bit complicated. Reading out loud messages really helps you to think about them better and to simplify them. And it's really helpful to understand how they sound. To simplify, set aside a block of time to schedule your interviews. So this is a huge one. This is also will help you. So if I'm conducting customer interviews and I wanted to have 20 customer interviews, what I would do is that I would I would create a calendar link with Calendly or any type of tools that allow me to do that, and I will make a few blocks, right? 2-hour block in the morning, 9 to 11, for example, and then 2 to 4, for example, and 2-hour block in the evening. And I'll do that for 2 weeks out so that I could have my interview done. And these blocks will allow me easily, first of all, structure my day around those interviews and be prepared and focused during that time. But also allows me the prospects when I reach out to them to easily to schedule and see when they want to have this call set up. And get tools, use tools, set up using Zoom and calls, use Calendly, use scheduling tools, maybe AI tools to do the summary. This would help you in outreach process as well. Now, want you to give you an exercise. Just think about how, based on templates that I provided, and you're gonna have a link to get more templates in terms of cold outreach. Get out and create 5 outreach messages for your research and see how that worked for you. All right, so reminder to like, subscribe, and if you have any questions so far, please leave in comments, and the template is going to be available. Now, the next step, we just discussed about how to do the outreach. Now let's talk about the actual interview process, right? Like you getting on the interview. Very quickly, a couple of interview skills that are important. Be prepared. So everything we talked about this course so far is about preparation for the interview. So more than 3/4, I would say 80% so far time spent over this 3.5 sessions have been about preparation. So be prepared and make sure you spend some time before the call to get prepared, who you're talking to, what the company they're from, like reviewing your script and so forth. Build a rapport. Just try to connect with the people, and they're just be genuinely curious. Try to if you have a connection with them working, if you know something about the company, try to share that, or try to understand if there's anything that connects you with them in some way. Maybe you went to the same school together or same grad school. That would be also helpful. So number 3, communicate effectively, and we'll talk about it more later. But effective communication means that your clear expression as good as your physical posture as well. So, and practice active listening, meaning that rephrase, make sure you understand what they're saying, and do not assume, just ask follow-up questions. All right, so be prepared and know what you want to learn. Again, this is all courses about getting you that strategy doc ready and script ready. Know who you're talking to. So every time I schedule interview call, I spend 2-3 minutes before the call, look in their LinkedIn, see if I learn something from them, understand who they are, try to build the connection before you start talking to that person. And number 3, be prepared and be on time. Again, I like to have a few minutes before the call to just get ready myself because it's always a little bit stressful. It's a person you haven't talked to, they don't know you, and you're trying to get information from them. So be prepared and be on time. And set the stage, introduce yourself as we talked about, explain your goals and ask to record. So those types of things will help you get settled and get into the mood for the interview. Now, how to build rapport? Be nice, be welcoming, make the person you're talking to comfortable. Curiosity and patience helps. Want to be, and if you have just genuine curiosity about things, you'll have a better way doing it. Smile and try to have a physical posture that will communicate a proper message, and practice compassion and empathy while you're listening to the customer. When in terms of communicating effectively, there's a couple of things that I want you to showcase for you. First, have an eye contact. I know we are in the Zoom calls, but still try to have eye contact with the people that you're talking to, have a proper body language. Don't translate something that you're not interested in this conversation. Use simple language, avoid buzzwords, jargons, try to ask simple questions, simple and short. Do more listening than talking. Again, this is an interview. You're interviewing them. You're trying to get information, and you will try to get the information efficiently. And avoid projection and project emotional neutrality. I have done previously, early when I started doing customer interviews, there was multiple times where I go on the call and I ask a question and they answer something that I'm super excited because this is exactly the problem I want to solve, and this is exactly why I want to solve this problem. And I get so excited, I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting, you just said that. And this is really a wrong way to do. You have to keep your emotional neutrality, because people will understand that you're emotionally connected. They would feel like what you want to hear, and they will just give you the answers you want to hear. So seek stories and feelings and not just facts. So this goes back to sometimes you'll ask, hey, what's your buying process, right? Like this is a question you can ask about the fact. But also you can also ask that, hey, tell me the last time you bought something, or describe me the last time you had to go through approval process, right? You see, this is a little bit different. And the second options elicit more stories and examples of those feelings. And the last one is try to cover the most important question first, meaning that when we discuss creating customer interview script, we talked about just ask a generic question first about themselves to introduce, then ask about process question, and then right away dig into the problem, because you're not going to have a lot of time and you want to start digging into the pain problem right away. And that's why you want to start with most important question first, so that by the time you get at the end of the interview, there's going to be some questions you're not going to be able to answer due to time constraints, and that's okay because you already covered some of the more important ones. Now, how to practice active listening. First of all, reflect and say it back to ensure that you understood it correctly. This is just a rephrasing. This is a good way to kind of showcase that you understand what you have heard. Don't be distracted by note-taking or anything else. Obviously, prepare the place that you're doing your interview so you're not going to get distracted. And since you're recording interview, you don't have to write something, the response the customers have. Sometimes, for my purposes, I would just automatically take a pen and write something or one or two phrases, and because I feel like that was important to capture. But I would not do that often, and I'm not interact my eye contact with the person I'm actually interviewing. So it is important for probing for depth and asking examples. We talked about the 5 whys and the lettering questions. You want to go deeper and you want to understand the meanings and feelings and emotions behind certain decisions and certain problems. Clarify when in doubt. What do you mean by that? It's a great question. Is when you're like, hey, we have this type of sales process. And first, like we start showcasing them. What do you mean by demo? Like, what's the demo looks like? So those types of questions would help you. Then watch for body language. You don't want to project that you're not interested, so make sure that you sit upright and have a appropriate body language. And follow up on why and how. This is also a great way to ensure you have active listening. And when people respond to you with some of the content, you can follow up with some of the questions on why they feel this way or how they do it. All right, so some of the interview tips. I'm prepared. I sometimes have this very quick tip, like before the call, when I spend reviewing my script and who I'm going to be talking to, I write their name and put in front of my laptop on a sticky note, so that I'm very bad with names. And when you're stressed out in the stressful condition and you interview, and just ensure that you have the name of the person right in front of you. And I would always use that to remind me. Be respectful of customers' time. If you're running late, please tell them, hey, we only have 3 or 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I respect your time. Let me just ask you 1, 2 questions, and then we'll move on. Or sometimes you can say, hey, we're running out of time. There's only a couple minutes left. Do you have extra 3 to 5 minutes to stay on the call so I can ask you 1 more question? And if they say no, then that's fine. You move on. So look for problems to be solved and successes to be replicated. This means that you're looking for pains, but sometimes somebody have tried to solve this problem internally, and you can learn that from that and maybe replicate it to other customers or use that in building your new product. Ask questions in a different ways, paraphrase, interview, and answer to get clarification. And leave your beliefs at the door. Don't be overexcited, as I was mentioning in an example. Interview for you to learn and for them to share that with you. So make sure that you're not placing the beliefs that you have on them. So number 6, embrace silence and ask for specifics. This was another thing that I had a challenge with early in my career when I was conducting customer interviews. I was very anxious when you ask a question and you have this awkward silence, and I tried to rephrase the question, or even worse, sometimes give them idea what those options to answer those questions are. And I realized that it's really not effective way to do the interview, and the best thing to do is just actually keep it silent for 20-30 seconds. Keep it silent, let the person think, let them dig into. Most likely you'll get a better answer and more insightful answer. Number 7 is direct the conversation. So it's going to be some instances where the person is just goes in a different direction, and you have to interrupt them politely and say, hey, let me just cut it for interest of time here and just ask you another question. This is a way to kind of redirect the conversation a little bit another way. Number 8, not all interviews will be helpful, and that's okay. Sometimes you're going to get an interview and that's going to be a wrong person, or you're going to catch them on the wrong day. So just keep that in mind. There's no point to be disappointed. Just move on to the next person and try to learn from the next interview. Number 9, avoid talking about products, companies, ideas, instead of focus on them, on people you're interviewing and their problems and their pains and their needs. This is simple, and we kind of discussed that. Number 10, listen more than you talk. Try to have a ratio, listen to talk ratio 4:1. It's a good way for you to remember that you are here to listen and learn, and you're going to learn only if you ask great questions and if you allow people to respond to those questions. And when you get on the phone, always, and I think recruiters do that quite a bit, you always want to kind of check, is it still a good time? Because sometimes personal life come into play. There's something urgent happened at work and they didn't had a chance to email you and rebook the call. And if you get on a call, ask them. And if they say no, rebook it for other time and move on. Just be respectful. All right, so I want to talk about overcoming interview challenges. And there are three interview types that are challenging that you might want to think about prior. And when you experience those types of challenges, you'll be able to respond. One of them, overly talkative respondent, somebody who talks a lot and you have to direct the conversation. The other challenge is like the opposite one is overly quiet respondents. And the third one is somebody who is impatient and angry. This very rarely, but sometimes. So I believe out of 300 plus interviews, I only had one interview that the person was a little bit irritated and we just decided that to stop the interview in the middle of it just because it wasn't very helpful. All right, so if you are dealing with overly talkative person, listen and redirect simply and direct questions so that they do not go into some weeds. You will have to learn how to interrupt them sometimes, meaning that if they are going, I had one example where the person went on a huge monologue around the politics at the office, and that was not very helpful to what I was trying to learn. And I listened for a bit and I realized that I need to redirect. I would just say, hey, interrupt. And I understand this is a huge problem. I understand it. But let me ask you another question here. And slightly politely redirect this conversation to another way. Also, I remind time limits and time check. Make sure that you keep an eye on the time when you do interview. And just to remind them that, this is a very short interview. We want to make sure that we get to the most important questions. So this is another way to kind of redirect the conversation. And if you have an overly talkative person and you understand that every question takes a long time, that means you need to prioritize questions that are more important. So you probably want to start with most important questions first and try to get as much information and insight around the topics that you were initially interested in. All right, so if you are overly quiet respondent on the call with, show interest, like really show interest and curiosity towards them. Try to learn more about them so they will open up. If they answer very short and not very insightful, just ask to explain, ask them to give you an example. Use projective techniques that are very helpful as well for those who are maybe a little bit shy or not willing to have a conversation. So that's a couple ways to direct the conversation if the responder is overly quiet. And if somebody is impatient or angry and it's not going that well, again, try to check if this timing is still good. And sometimes they will just reschedule to some other time because something happened. Talking to the customers, understand if there's any issues with the product that they're using. Here, what happens, and it happened to me once, where I got on the call with a customer, and instead of just me interviewing them, they just basically used that call as a support ticket. They had something in the support that I have not known, and there was something that isn't happy. Yes, it's opportunity to learn, but dealing with customer support questions is not really the proper customer interview. So you either have to have this conversation and book another call with this person or just move on to another person next time. Just make sure that when you get on a call, try to work with your team and see if you're talking to a customer that the customer team that created that or scheduled that call for you do not have some problems or some issues that the customer has with the product. All right, so I want to also leave you with a couple of things when it comes to biases. It's important to think about biases, and there's a whole huge map of biases you can research and think and how that apply to customer interview. But I want to point out three biases, right? The order bias, meaning that the first will get the most discussion. So if you want to discuss different options, change the order of the options between the interviews. If you're trying to analyze the problems or you try them to rank or rate them. So recency bias. So if you talked about, presented a couple of options like option 1 or option 2, option 3, the last concept will get the highest priority. So do the final review between the options before you're asking people to ranking exercise. The third one is framing bias. So how things are presented is important. So avoid just ordering offers or options like ABC or 1, 2, 3. Just do some random letters so that there's no framing around. There's no options. All right. So let's talk about the last section: how to summarize and analyze customer interviews. So you conducted 15 customer interviews. After each interview, I suggest you still, even if it's what's recorded, you create notes. And I would create an Excel file. You'll have a name, a link to recording, the company, the title, the LinkedIn, the summary of everything that went, bullet points of the summary, then the top problems, and I would categorize problems into some sort of tags. Is this problem related to efficiency? Is this problem related to the ROI? Is this problem related to something else? And structure your analysis. Create a structure for summary and summarize each interviews. And the main thing when you think about synthesizing and summarizing your learnings is that you need to think about a couple of questions. First, what points came up in multiple interviews? Like, were there points or things that repeated itself multiple times? Also, don't forget to classify the problem. Don't forget to say, like, are they aware or about this problem? What's the level of urgency? What's the frequency and severity of this problem? What's the impact? Also think about what customers provided the most useful feedback, because if you're doing the interview and it's very broad and there's different people involved in the buying cycle, of the first round, you might be realizing that this is a certain segment of customer is more helpful than the other, and you might want to structure the rest of the interviews with that customer segment. What have you learned from this process? Like, what are the things that were truly insightful or something you have not learned? Is there something out of all the interviews you have conducted that you have not known before you started those interviews? And then go back to hypothesis and confidence level that you created, like how those change. Does the interviews you conducted have changed the way your hypothesis and confidence levels are? So come back and change them. It's a good way to see sort of this gap between what you saw and what you have learned. Now, think about what was the most surprising things that you've heard. How can you improve your customer interviews? So it is also important to exercise the skill. The more interviews you do, the better you will get. Have you heard of any product or customer users today? That's another way of summarizing whether they have no alternative to solving this problem or they're using competitor. And if your business objective was to create an ideal customer profile or strategic messaging, do you have insights, or how would you change those customer profile and messaging with new information that you received from those interviews? So I like to conduct customer interviews in phases. It helps me to adjust each single time. So if I want to do 20 customer interviews, I do 5 customer interviews first, and I see if I want to change questions and if I want to change priority, if I want to manage something differently. Or sometimes I do 5 interviews and I learn, okay, I have pretty much here every single time I hear the same answer on the process of hiring, for example, right? But so now on interviews 6 to 10, I'll focus more around the technical part of the interview process, right? And then, in the next 5 interviews, I'll focus more around the technical assessment or code review, specifically if the company or a prospect is incorporating into the hiring process. All right, summary and last words. Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking your time and listening to this course and this material. I hope you find this helpful. This was really multiple years in making. It was a lot of sort of trying to figure out what to put or what not to put here to make it deep enough, but also not to drag this information for too long. But remember, perfection is the enemy of good, so just get out and talk to the customers. Yes, be prepared, try to be better, but it's kind of like a sales. It's a skill. You have to practice this, and the practice makes perfect. Conduct interviews, as I was mentioning, in batches and adjust after each batch, and that will help you to be better and improve your skills quicker. Even for existing products, schedule at least one interview per week. So I do recommend that you have some sort of regular conversation with your customers. And I like to have at least once per week where I have a direct conversation with the customer about how they're using the product or somebody who would be a good fit. And remember, interviews are conversations. They're not depositions. So it's not you just asking questions and them answering. Like, just try to have it in a nice flow and dialogue where you're more listening, you're asking questions, but it's not an interrogation. All right, so one other thing that I want to leave with you is that continuous discovery is extremely important. You want to continue to learn about your customers, and it's not just one and done. Yes, if you want to conduct every, customer interviews, 10 customer interviews every quarter, or every 6 months, or every year, yes, please do that, plan for it. But sometimes you want to have a couple of small interviews here and there where you're trying to figure out certain feature, or you're trying to get understanding on some other part of the problem that the customer might have. Please, have a consistent conversation with them. Very often teams and companies create product console. This is basically a set of, I would say 5 to 10 customers that get regular conversation with you. Maybe they do a quarterly review of your roadmap and they help you showcase the releases that you do. There are multiple strategies to do it, but think about if you're a more mature company or you have, I would say that even for small companies, if you have customers try to create a product console, they would feel important, and you might want to like incentivize them to some degree. Maybe you're going to create an event or invite them for the dinner, and that would be, or provide them with some sort of other incentives. But it will be very helpful for you to have a product console so that you can talk to and get more information. Another one is add your go-to-market team, and don't be afraid to adding like designers and engineers in your customer interview. Let them hear from the customers directly. Yes, they can look at product analytics, they can look at recorded session, they can see support, listen to the sales calls, but nothing is as insightful as talking to the customer directly through the interview. So ensure that there's not too many people, but make sure that you get your team involved. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you found this presentation helpful. Please like and subscribe, leave comments and questions, and I will respond to them. Get templates, and if you want to get a practical conversation, if you think that 2 sessions or 3 sessions where we're going to practice the questions or where we're going to practice the interview itself will be helpful, please let me know if we're going to get 10 to 20 people that would be interested in this type of education or this type of exercise and practice. I'll put together some sort of webinar where people will be able to come up, showcase their interview scripts, and we will talk and role play them. So thank you. Again, this is Mick Bono, and good luck. Interview customers often.